Hello, everyone. This is a video portion for the Creating Your New Reality Manifesting as an HSP series. I've been very sick for the last couple of weeks. If you've read any of my other posts, you'll know that I've been dealing with one sickness after another, but I am on the tail end of my second bout of illness. So, feeling pretty decent today. Thought I would mix it up a little bit and do a video post. So I wanted to talk about manifesting as an HSP, obviously, and my own experiences, and how I really do feel that as highly sensitive people, we need to use our, I hate the word superpower, but our powers or our traits, our characteristics in a positive way whenever possible to make things happen for us that come easier than people who are non-HSP. And of course, you know that we talk, including myself, a lot about the negative aspects of being a highly sensitive person, but I do feel like it's important, without being Pollyanna-ish, to hone in on the positive and interesting and unusual aspects of being a highly sensitive person. So I wanted to provide two examples of how that have stood out to me for years, even decades, of how I manifested and noticed that manifestation happening as a highly sensitive person. This is even before I realized that what an HSP was and that I was one. So I have two examples that I've written down here. One, I was about probably in my early 20s, and I had done one university degree and completed it, and I was at home and visiting my parents, and my parents' friend came over and she was asking me, what do you want to do next, or what's your career goals, etc. And I said that I wanted to get into media and communications, and this is before the internet, so anyone who's over 40ish will probably understand that what I'm about to say is even was more difficult to achieve than it is now. But anyway, she said, "Oh, you should look into this program at this university in Toronto, Ontario, Canada." And I'm not going to say exactly what it is. It's basically a media, a radio, and television program that was and still is very highly regarded. And this is a university that's still in existence. It was a kind of a hybrid of a college and a university at the time, which is great because it offered practical skills in addition to theory, and now is like a full-fledged university, but it's still known for its um, hands-on approach. Anyway, she named the program. I went to the library, or I don't even remember how I found it out, how found out about university programs back in the day, and I applied. I applied on paper. It's actually a very difficult program to get into. So there was the typical application, but then you had to write an essay, and that was the kind of the first round of applications, which I did. I don't remember what the topic was. I would actually love to find that essay. It probably had to do something with why you felt like you were a good candidate to get to be accepted into the program. And then the second round, which I got into, was a interview, and I think that they would have allowed people to do telephone interviews if you were too far away and you didn't have the means to get to Toronto, but they preferred people to do it in person. So I was only, I don't remember if I drove or took the train or what have you, but I was only about a 4-hour drive from Toronto, from the university at that time. So I went in person. It was a very difficult interview. It was, just a face-to-face interview with one of the professors. But obviously I did well because I was accepted and I got into the program and I did well, and it really changed the course of my life. So the story isn't to talk about the program per se, although it did affect my life and the trajectory of my life. But I think it really stands out to me because I realized that by speaking to Jackie, who was my mom's friend, and kind of voicing what it is that I wanted and really listening to her advice and her feedback and following through with it, um, I was able to sort of quote unquote manifest this positive experience into my life. Now, I don't want to minimize the work and the expertise that's involved in this particular scenario, that's not going to be applicable for everyone. But I did want to highlight from an HSP perspective that it does involve really like communicating and listening, and taking in details and also noticing details, paying attention. Not everyone maybe would have taken to heart what this woman said to me or to them, or followed through with it, or really been engaged in that conversation. I do think that that's something that highly sensitive people are uniquely good at. And then, of course, maybe not as much HSP oriented. Maybe that's more of a personality trait just in general. But again, taking initiative, following through, and then understanding what happened. Like, really, when you think back about how all of that came together, it wasn't, in my mind, it's not a coincidence. It's a series of important events, and conversations and activities that happen to bring it to fruition, and in my case, sort of get into this program and be really successful at it. And again, it really impacted my career in communications. Hope you can't hear the sirens in the background. And then I'll just quickly talk about a second similar manifestation. To me, this is actually even more overt than the first example. I was working at a small marketing agency. Again, I think I was in my early 20s after I had graduated from the first program that I mentioned. And unfortunately, that agency wasn't doing well. And they were kind enough to actually let the employees know that it was going to close down or be shuttered. They just didn't have the funds to keep it going. So they gave us, I don't know, a couple weeks or a month's notice so that we could start looking for another job. So I was thinking about that. And again, this is kind of old school, but in this agency, and again, because there was no internet at the time, they had a big binder of that housed all these business cards. So because it was an agency, we had, excuse me, a lot of different client and vendor business cards in this big binder. So I probably was looking through it to find somebody else's card because I needed to contact them. But I remember this one business card just jumping out at me, like not literally, but figuratively. And like it really impacted me. And it ended up being, the business card for whoever. I don't know if it was the CEO or an administrative person or an HR person, but it was someone at an ad agency, a really big, well-known ad agency that was in the same building as the smaller marketing agency I was currently working for. So I thought, oh, well, that's like a great coincidence. I'm looking for a job. I wanted to get into advertising, and this other agency was in the same building. So I called them, or I might have even just gone down to that floor and introduced myself. I guess I did have a lot of guts because that's not easy to do, but you got to do what you got to do. And kind of explained who I was and how I got their name and number. And anyway, I don't remember if it was that day or closely following that interaction, but I had an interview with them, and then ended up getting a job, like a junior account executive, I think I was. And I worked there for about 3 years. And again, obviously almost every interaction will have an impact on your life, but that really gave me a lot of experience and allowed me to kind of keep moving up in my career. So I'm very sorry that I'm coughing so much. But again, I feel like not everyone would have that experience of like static information jumping out at them, or even, it could even have been a commercial or again, a conversation with somebody or a poster. But really, because we notice details and because things impact us so much, something jumping out at you like that and really taking notice, I think allowed me to understand that it was a sign and that I should, keep moving forward with this interaction. And ultimately it was successful. And actually, I would say, even if it wasn't successful and that I didn't get a job from that interaction, the fact that that information from the business card jumped out at me, I'll always remember that. It was like a very bizarre, almost supernatural experience. So I hope that those two personal examples help you understand the nuances of manifesting as an HSP, and look forward to writing and talking more about this topic. Thank you.